Focus. A public information program designed to bring you the viewers up to date with current events taking place here in Antigua and Barbuda. This is Focus.
Hello and welcome to Focus. On our last program, we featured the undefeated King Obstinate. In the next two, we shall follow the development of steel band in our nation. That was the oldest steel band in the country, performing a piece from Mozart. Who in 1945 or 47 would have thought that possible? Not many, if any, but there we have it. Outside of Trinidad, this country has made the greatest strides in the continued development of this art. We have followed closely on the heels of our Trinidadian counterparts, leaping onto the steel band music scene with a bang. How did it all start? As with any history which is not documented, there are bound to be conflicting claims. Some claim that it was in the year 1946, when an Antiguan who traveled to Trinidad on one of the lady boats returned with a steel pan, a six-noter. Others claimed that it was 1947, when the first organized pan music was heard from a local band, the first pan being locally produced. But whichever it is, one thing certain, and that is, it was the Hell's Gate Steel Band which was the first organized. To learn some more about this, let us talk with a lifelong member, Mr. Eustace Manning Henry.
It started in between 1945 and 1946, with the iron. But the steelman as we know it, with pans and so on, started in 1947, as an organized body. Hell's Gate was the first band, and that's the year that we decided where we are going to appoint a captain, president, and treasurer, and so on. So that's where it started. It started with iron. First, they used to have a band they call a house coat band, which goes around every Christmas or holidays, the case may be. But they weren't much of an instrument, just drums and more or less singing. Then sometime in, say, 1945, a few fellas went to Trinidad. They came back with the idea. They didn't bring any pans, just the idea about the steel bands. But we started with the iron. They didn't introduce the pans right away. We started with the hubcaps and pipes and so on. And then I was living in St. George's Street, not far from Thousands Blacksmith Shop, where it started down point. And I heard the argument about this steel band, and I went the afternoon to find out. I heard them going out the night, and I went to them, and I was with them from ever since.
Tell us some more, Mr. Henry, about some of the other bands that were involved when steel band came to Antigua.
Well, Hell's Gate, as I said, was the first band. Red Army from Grace Farm area, that was the second. And Brute Force was the third. Then you got Sun Valley, that's from the Barnsley area. Then Rising Sun from the Pickett's area. Then North Star, I think, from the Barnsley New Winchester area. Those were the early bands.
Who were some of the other persons involved in steel band in those years?
Well, I can remember Eugene Weston. Well, he's the first one I heard talking about the steel band. Eugene Weston, fans of Philip. George Williams is quite early too. Jellicoe, I remember Benjamin, he died. George Joseph was an early one. Alexander Roberts, Cecil Phillip, Fundu, Bruce Bloodman. I didn't mention them at first because Fundu, at the beginning, whenever he used to play, he used to blow the bugle. See, I started to remember the pan players first, but he used to play the bugle, but he came in early too. Those are some of the early fellas. I can't remember much more.
Tell us a little bit more about Hell's Gate, Mr. Henry.
But Hell's Gate was started that time, and we've been, fellas from all over the island used to play in Hell's Gate before the other band started. Then you find after, fellas from Grace Farm used to come and beat with Hell's Gate. But after Red Army was formed, I mean, they started to be Red Army, the South Australia, Brute Force, and so on. And we continued that way. We started, almost everybody in the band at the time used to take part in making pans. I mean, in our own way, we used to make pans. And then Alec was the first to really master the art of, tuning and so on. So the most of the tuning were left to Alec at that time. Then myself, Alec, Cecil Phillip, and a few others, we make pans. And Alec went away. He went away and left Fundu, myself, Cecil, and who were left. We continued making pans. In the meantime, the other bands formed, and they were making their own pans too. Pans weren't imported in those days. Everybody used to make their own pans. But there was a difficulty because if you leave this band, you could not have gone to another band and play the instrument because the instrument would be different. The placement of the notes would be different. Everybody would do their own thing, in other words.
The name Hell's Gate, Mr. Henry, how did it come about?
It came about from the iron. We didn't plan to call it Hell's Gate. No, from the iron band, imagine 60, 70 fellas with pieces of iron, hubcaps and all sorts of things, making noise. And I used to see people close the windows and the doors when this band coming down. And they used to say, but that's so like the gates of hell, this sort of thing. It used to be annoying to some people while we used to enjoy ourselves. So the name Hell's Gate, eventually the iron goes away and the noise and everything goes, music started, but the name Hell's Gate remains.
Now, Mr. Henry, how were the bands formed? For example, could people from Grace Farm, Green Bay area be involved with Hell's Gate, or did the people who play in Hell's Gate come from the Point area?
The people from Hell's Gate primarily came from the Point area, but other people could be involved. It just happened so in those days they never find much people otherwise than Point people in Hell's Gate. But they could come if they wanted, they could join. A few of them did come and played for some time until they're ready, they move on.
Tell us some more about your personal involvement with steel band and particularly Hell's Gate here in Antigua.
Well, as I said, I was with it from the beginning. I used to make pans. Although I've been making pans now for 40 years from the beginning, there are a lot of fellas that have been making pans long after that has made more pans than me. I wasn't the primary tuner for the band. I used to make my own pan and maybe a few friends and so on, but there are fellas that used to make a profession. And as these fellas move on, I decide, well, I have to undertake this obligation because we don't want to import pans, so we believe in the local. So from ever since, for the past 18 years, I've been making the pans for Hell's Gate. I make pans for others too, if they want, but they get much more than that.
Tell me, Mr. Henry, you developed the art for making and tuning the pans here in Antigua. Did you go to Trinidad perhaps for any sort of training?
I went to Trinidad, but not for training. We went in Trinidad in 1959 with Hell's Gate. and we stayed there a week. But we weren't taught anything. We didn't see anything. We only, well, heard steel bands playing, and we played on the stage, and that's it. I went again, myself and Fundu, Bruce Bloodman, in '68, just to observe. West Indies oil send us. They used to sponsor Hellsgate at the time. And we went and we didn't say anything because when we go to certain pan yards, we would see a sign mark, members only, and so on, you know, these sort of things. And so we just look and we keep moving. Then the only band that we were able to go in the pan yard, it was Invaders, Shell Invaders. You remember they were here sometime. So I guess they had this sort of, we were able to go there. But we didn't see much. We didn't see much. We saw fellas just knocking around the place. We didn't see anything organized. They're just milling around, nothing that we could learn.
So your art was developed right here in Antigua?
Yes, and from any idea, anybody, but members of the band will come and say, well, why you don't try this or why you don't try that? And I heard a band and someone, and how to get that, and we'll experiment with the help from the members of the band. We never get any training or the outside,
Nowadays, Mr. Henry, pans are being imported. Some are bringing in pan tuners from Trinidad too. As a pan tuner yourself, how do you feel about this?
Well, I guess at this time, they'll have to at this time, but there were no need for it. And the question came up all the time. Our people, I can't help saying so, we start to believe in things that are imported more than our own. We don't really help develop our own. And those of us that try to keep things going locally, we don't get much help. We don't get much encouragement because if you make a pan, they hear the pan, it mightn't be 100% as one that is imported, but they don't say, well, let's try this, and why you don't try that and improve it so and so. No, they just say, oh, that's no good, and they cry it down and let it down. That's why I'm very proud of Hellsgate, because it was the first band. We had a certain pride in that, and we have never imported any pan at all, and actually, and our sound, our tonal quality has never been condemned. So we keep going that way.
Mr. Henry, what are your impressions of the development of steel band in Antigua from since its inception to present day?
Well, I would say steel band has gone a long way. The quality of the music and everything like that has improved. Although the pride of the men, to me, they don't really take pride in the instrument as they should. The older fellas used to put the heart in it. These fellas, to me, well, not all really, but in general, it looks to me that they're in it just for, financial, another reason, maybe a little publicity or something, but I don't think they really have it at heart. But steel band has developed very well, and I'm hoping that it will continue, because I understand they're teaching it in the schools now. But the problem is, well, I shouldn't say a problem. What I'm concerned about is that although we have many youngsters playing steel band from the schools, I don't see anything organized for them to learn to build a pan. So I guess we still have to import even more pan tuners, builders.
You said you were very much impressed with the development of steel band in Antigua. When you compare it with other steel bands, perhaps in Trinidad at this time, how do you feel?
We can compare with steel bands anywhere. The only difference I see is the size of the bands. Trinidad, of course, they'll swamp you with size. They're really good at that. But our steel bands, they can compare. I think we can compare favorably with other bands, yeah.
What have been some of the problems you have encountered, Mr. Henry, as somebody involved with steel band over the years?
The problem is you can't get drums to experiment. You need, for you to improve, you need a certain amount. You can't just, have some drums there. But I have to make sure every one of those have to do something. I can't take one and say, let me try this. And because you can't get, you don't know where you're going to get it from again. You get a drum is $40, $45 sometimes. You're lucky if you get one to $20, $30. And that's one of the problems. You can't get drum to really experiment and do as you like with.
Now, tell us some of what you're doing here, Mr. Henry.
Well, I'm sinking this drum. This is where it starts. This is where the pan starts, by sinking it here. It's hard work, as you will imagine, with this iron. But this is one that I finished this morning. I was grooving. After sinking, you will have to draft it out. Then the placement of the notes. where you're going to place the different notes, and after drafting it out, you use your center punch, your groove, and after you finish grooving, you'll have to really beat it in to get it smooth out. All right. After that, then you'll put it in the fire, temper it in the fire. After the fire, then you'll go to the tuning. That will be the final.
As we wrap up our discussion here, Mr. Henry, the future for Hell's Gate, how does it look?
It looks good to me. It looks good to me, but I'm not really an active player as such now because I'm more concentrated in making the pans. But I don't want this to get out of hand, more or less. And I try to train one or two of the other fellas. My son there, there's a bass here, and there's several basses that he makes. So he started to on the right foot with that. But otherwise than that, I think it's all right. There's a steel band association, and seems quite strong and active, and the men are quite energetic. And to me, it looks all right. The band is a bit small. I think they need more members. That is just about all. But otherwise than that, everything is all right.
Steel band was not acceptable to most of the upper class in the society. Whenever they played on the streets, they were hounded by the police on the advice of the nobility. It was, to them, with the exception of one man, a public nuisance. That one extraordinary man was the governor of the Leeward Islands, Lord Baldwin, the only man among this elite who would openly declare that steel band was worthy of respect and preservation. Lord Baldwin offered to become the patron of Hell's Gate, and did in fact invite them to perform at functions held at the government house. This act, no doubt, prompted the late respectable V. Griffith, the tutor of the Royal Antigua Police Force then, and the late senator in the West Indies Federation, Bertha Higgins, a musician of high esteem, to work with the Brute Force and Hell's Gate steel bands respectively. His actions did not find favor elsewhere, and he was summoned to England in 1951 to give an account of his stewardship after complaints had been lodged in England against him. Lord Baldwin was given a rousing send-off by the Hell's Gate steel band and thousands of local people who lined the High Street Pier to wish him Godspeed. The tune they played was "Baldwin Must Come Back in a Suit of Black." Such was the esteem in which he was held, and Lord Baldwin did come back that self-same year. So what of those times? We journeyed across to Jambi Bay Resort to speak with Bruce Fundu Bloodman while his band, the Fundu Serenaders, played for the guest.
We started out with old irons and whatnot before 47. It was about 46. Well, the season come into being then, 47. And the public really didn't like it too well. They thought it was some kind of a rebel thing, so they didn't like it. Police used to run us, and so when we go on the road, whatnot, so then Governor Baldwin said, no, I mean, they always go, they went to Governor Baldwin, telling him about the noise that we made on the streets, and Governor Baldwin tell them what the dogs that they have in their home make more noise than the steel band. So there's where we come and show up to now.
Who really brought the idea of steel band to Antigua, do you know?
Well, he started in Trinidad. And we just have some boats here that go Trinidad for oil and whatnot. And one of the sailor brought a pan and said, well, Trinidad have steel band and we feel we supposed to have one too. And so he brought the pan, and then from there we take the idea and we started to tamper, we must say, tamper, until we really made it.
Well, what were some of the bands around that time, Fundu?
Well, it was Hell's Gate first, the mother band. And then Red Army, then Brute Force. Some people say, that they used to say Hell's Gate, Brute Force, and Red Army, but they have it wrong. The Hell's Gate, Red Army, then Brute Force.
Which one of the bands were you involved with, Fundu?
Oh man, the mother band. Hell's Gate, of course.
Tell us about the years you spent in Hell's Gate. What were they like?
Well, that is something else. I can't even explain. We had a lot of hard work. We traveled a lot, and it was kind of a hectic, somewhat when we started, because when we started, we had pans around our neck, and we walk from this way, from Pine to Great Farm, all around, pans around your neck. Up to there now, the bands up to there now, they have it very easy. They have Charlie, even though we started it, so they patronized off the mother band, Hell's Gate, as you know.
No, Fundu, were pan men in those days tuning their own pans? Tell me some more about it.
Yeah, sure. I used to tune my own pan. Manning used to tune his own pan. Elick used to do it. We was a tuner for Hell's Gate at those days.
Nowadays, Fundu, people are importing pans. They're also even bringing in pan tuners. How do you feel about this type of development?
Well, I really don't think that should be, really, because we have a lot of tuners here. When I was in Hell's Gate, the same harmonize here, that used to be Judy Hell's Gate. And I used to be the tuner and maker for Hell's Gate. And I used to make for the Junior Hell's Gate as well. And when I make a pan, like they go and play out and so, and the pan drop. No tune in their band. So they just have to play it so, and they say, like in Hell's Gate now we have more than 2 tuners. So anything happens. So our instrument always sound good, because we hear a note, we got to, we just get it right. So I used to make for harmonize, Junior Hell's Gate, it was at the time. And they said, well, I make instrument better than theirs, and rather than one, So they decided to get a Trinidadian to make the instrument. But I don't think, that should be, because we have good makers here in Antigua.
Do you still tune the pans, Fundu?
Sure. I tune my own pan.
Fundu, I've heard about you turning around the sticks in a cantata. Tell me about it. How did you do it?
Well, that's a good question. How did I do it? But it was something just in me. Probably just gifted, I just think, well, I should try something of my own. You know what I mean? So I just invented that. And a lot of people really tried it too, even Brute Force.
Were they successful?
Oh, not as not as good as Fundu.
Fundu, you've watched steel band developed over the years in Antigua. You're certainly still in it. What are your impressions of the progress being made by steel band and pan men in Antigua?
Well, a lot of progress. I should say a lot of progress. You know, I mean, these guys now like harmonize, you know, not because they come out of Hell's Gate really, but I always believe in that band. And they play a lot of classic, and plus most of the guys used to be in Hell's Gate, so they know what, you know. I feel it impressed me a lot. I mean, good music, and so, you know.
But is there anything that you'd like to see be done to improve steel band in Antigua?
What I would really like, that they stop bringing the Trinidad into tune our instrument here, and especially like Calypso time, when Carnival time, when they have steel band showing whatnot and steel band competition, they'll bring in a arranger from Trinidad. Then the Trinidad will come and give them arrangement that they don't give band in Trinidad, and I don't think that should be. We have talented men here that can do the same thing and even better. Because at one time, you know, Hell's Gate was over Trinidad. Yeah, with steel band. We had them gone with steel band, and they make a comeback and can't catch them again. Maybe if I was still in the read, you know, like me and Manning, we'd capture them again. But, you know, seeing that we leave Hell's Gate, you know.
Fundu, you indicated a little earlier that steel band was not readily accepted in society. People regarded it as a sort of radical thing. Would you say today it is fully accepted in society?
Sure. I would say that.
Fundu, you moved out of Hell's Gate. You're now on your own. Has that changed you in any way?
Like?
Has it had any advantages or disadvantages on you as a pan man?
No, I don't think so. No. I still probably play more better now, seeing that I'm on my own.
Drums, is it very difficult? What are some of the problems pan men face, Fundu?
Well, especially at Carnival time, they face a lot of problems getting drums, most of all. Especially those that not bringing in any Trinidadian or what, you know. Because sometimes these Trinidadians that come down here, they just bring down pants for some of the bands, you know. I won't have to call the names, but I know. You know, they bring pants from there because they can get drums up there very easy. So what they do, they make them up there and bring them here. But like band like Hell's Gate, that man have to really burst his brains to get drums and build instruments for them, you know, and like, I would say, well, Rising Sun not there now. Bands that really don't have any help. I think it's very difficult to them at Carnival time, especially.
Fundu, with someone of your experience, what word of advice would you give to pan men in Antigua?
To keep it up.
The future for Fundu Serenaders, how does it look?
It's all right, I would say. You know, we get a lot of offer to go away, so, but seeing as how some of the fellas working, they can't go, so we just spin down here, you know, for now.
had successfully wrested the Pan Supremacy crown from their Trinidadian counterparts. Hell's Gate had appeared in St. Thomas in 1949. Brute Force had attended the Caribbean Cultural Festival in Puerto Rico in 1952, and both had recorded on the Cook label. Antigua Steel Band was on the move. This thrust produced many new pan players and subsequently new bands, among these the Harmonite Steel Orchestra, originally billed as the Junior Hell's Gate. These young men brought with them zest and determination, and with the help of some of Antigua's most brilliant musicians, began displaying a dexterity unthought of. Songs like Light Calvary and Theme from Dr. Zhivago became overnight sensations, like Handel's Messiah had, after Hell's Gate rendition of the Hallelujah Chorus in the steel band competition. Here, we talk with the first captain of the Harmonite Steel Orchestra, Mr. Rupert Taylor Parker. Mr. Parker, your involvement in steel band in Antigua, when did it start?
1962.
What band were you in? Tell us some more about it.
It was Junior Hell's Gate. I was the captain when I started. It was George Weeks and myself. We tried to do something on our own, you know, having nothing to do. The young fellas, we try to get something started. So you get a couple of fellas together, start something nice.
But who it was that inspired you to start in the steel band business?
It was Dennis Byam, a guy from Hell's Gate. They call him Nonny. You know, he was a carpenter. I used to do some things with him, and after that, you know, try to get involved in the steel band affairs.
What was the steel band like in your time?
Well, I would say rough. It was hard work. The public never get involved in steel band. People like to tell you, if you're playing pan, you're nothing. You have to have a tie, office guy. Nobody ever like a steel band. Well, I believe we should try something new, you know, and we just get involved.
Did you arrange for Junior Hell's Gate as well?
Well, I do the arrangement. I do the pan tuning. Well, I was, let me say, an all-rounder.
I'm glad you mentioned the business of you tuning the pans, because now, Mr. Parker, I noticed that pans are being imported. Some are still being tuned locally, but which one do you think is better for us here in Antigua?
Well, the imported pans are better. You know, living up to the standard, we don't get the tuners that we like. You know, our tuners are still behind. They want to get some more involved. We went to a seminar in Trinidad. It was nice, you know, but the guys didn't live up to it. And the only one I think that put more into it, it was Manning, Eustace Henry, Hell's Gate. He did a lot. But the others, they didn't follow up.
But tell me, Mr. Parker, your overall impressions with steel bands in general in Antigua, how far have we come?
Well, I would say to the top. You know, Harmonites, they used to have Hell's Gate, Brute Force, let me say Red Army, Rising Sun. Heard all of them. When I compete with my band, Harmonites, I believe we did a lot.
How does the future look to you for pan men in Antigua when you stand out there and you observe it?
Well, the future, I would say the band should get together, form, let me say, a union, you know, pan men union. I think they started one, but I believe that all the guys should get together and try to do something on their own. The guys are straying too much.
There is now a Steel Band and Pan Players Association, Mr. Parker, that has been formed recently. Do you think this will in any way assist pan men?
Well, I believe so, if they keep it up. Because I know usually steel band men start something, just straight away.
Do you think there's still that sense of pride in pan men?
A lot. Pan men always have pride, you know, but I'm saying the public, not enough support. So the pan men just just lack of everything and just do anything they feel like.
Mr. Parker, a word of encouragement from you to panmen in Antigua. What would you say to them?
I would say panmen hold hands, together, make one family.
The famed American jazz singer Dakota Staton has sung on many occasions with the Hell's Gate Steel Band. The present Harmonites are actively engaged in reviving this practice. Here, they perform at the Jolly Beach Hotel.
Time can never
Toulon is captain of the Harmonite Steel International, and this evening we'll be looking at his involvement in steel band in Antigua over the years. Tell us how you got involved in steel band, really.
Well, to be honest with you, I got involved in steel band in school as an activity period. We used to go to the academy and we used to have activity period where you could get involved in either wood carving, steel band or tumbling. And I chose to do tumbling the first year, and then that carnival I saw some of my friends from the school who used to be in steel band playing on the road in Harmonites, and then the following year I went back. That was September. Went back. I left tumbling and started as an activity period, right? And from then onwards, that same carnival following, I went down with my friends who had started the year before me and joined Harmonites, and that was in 1973, right? And from then onwards, I've just been involved all the way.
How have you seen steel band progress here in Antigua over the years?
Well, steel band in general haven't come really, that has come a long way, right? But the road has been hard, right? Um, you've had a lot of, people only recognize steel band when there's carnival. After that, they don't know what it takes, or what you do until from this carnival to the other carnival to stay up, right? And my personal opinion is that I think the local people in general should appreciate steel band some more.
Now, you told me that you developed the interest in steel band while you were in school. Who were some of your friends that were in the steel band at that time?
Well, some of my friends, one is still presently playing in the band. His name is Carol Wataifa Johnson. The other one, his name is Ian Michael. He's not a plain out member, but he still is a member. But carnival times, he comes down and plays for us for the competition.
What type of instrument do you play in the steel band?
I play the six bass.
Do you tune pans for harmonites?
No, I don't. But you could never tell. Maybe in the long run, might get into all of that, we want to really establish steel band in a sense that when time comes, right, people would say, well, Harmonites wasn't just a band. There will be something to show that Harmonites did exist, something that you can look and see, not just a talk about. That's our goal and aspiration right now for Harmonites.
Now, there has been a lot of argument as to whether pans should be imported, whether they should be made and tuned locally, or whether we should be bringing in pan tuners. How do you feel about this subject?
Well, my personal opinion upon that is that in Antigua, right, we are not up to the standard as yet as Trinidad is in terms of sounding of our pan. Now, I would think that really goes because it's not that we don't have the talent here, it's that they have never had a chance to develop that talent. We have guys who have had a real good idea, guys like a former captain of the band, his name is Rupert Taylor Parker. He's a very good tuner, but then he has never maybe had the opportunity to develop that skill, and maybe his way our government could maybe play a part in do something about those sort of things, maybe, I don't know what they do in Trinidad. I believe in Trinidad they send away guys and so to train, and, there's more a general interest into that sort of thing than here.
How has the going been for Harmonites?
It has been rough. It's not been easy. We've had to put up with a lot of things. Not only in the band, personal and so on. I mean, having to work in the day and having to play out 4 nights a week and then practice 2 nights a week. I mean, you really don't get much of a personal life differently to that, right? And you have to be real devoted to really do something like that.
Do you think there's still pride in panmen?
Yes, there's pride. I mean, that's what people used to think before that there wasn't pride, right? People, panman was looked down upon as street bums and whatnot, people that had nothing else to do, but it's the tourists who has really come here and has shown us the appreciation for pan, They have really tell us, they recognize what we got, and we at Haviti, we're not cherishing it, And this pride among us because we feel good when they feel good, and, playing to them and really hearing them feel nice for you playing the music with them, it makes you feel good.
Now, a Steel Band and Pan Players Association has been formed. In what way do you think this will assist panmen in Antigua?
Well, if all goes well, and there's unity among everything and cooperation, I think with the plans they've got, I think pan should improve.
And what of Harmonites for the future?
Well, our motto is success favors the brave, and we're always willing to try something new. And I can only hope for the best for Harmonites.
The Superstar Steel Band is another that has made a contribution towards the development of steel band. They, like Hell's Gate and Harmonites, have been the champion band of this country. They too have gone abroad to represent this country and have done us proud. How does their captain, Mr. Glendon Kellogg Edwards, see the steel band and its development?
I started in steel band back in 1968, playing for Texaco Astronauts. You know, I started playing pan actually in my bedroom. You know, it was on a day like confirming the Saturday, and I started playing pan on that day. That was the 12th of June, 1968.
Texaco Astronauts, tell us a bit about that band.
Well, I was fairly young, so I wouldn't be able to tell you much about it anyway, but part of my family was playing, you know, like my two biggest brothers, they started it, along with Johnny Gums, Bum Jardine, you know, and Patrick, Michael, Polke. Those some real outstanding pan guys, you know. And it was nice, but I can't really say much about it. It didn't last too long anyway.
You are now with Superstars, so tell us, how did you get involved with Superstars?
Well, I started in Superstars back in 1974. After the band returned from St. Thomas, I started, you know, it was, what to say, like I started and until now it's been nice.
You have what steel band developed in Antigua. What are your impressions with the move that has been made?
Well, the move is a very good move, despite that we have still some minor problems to figure out, you know, but all in all, it's coming to be what I would like it to be. One big body.
What are some of those problems you're mentioning?
Problems like sponsorship, right? A particular sponsor would tell her, well, he used to sponsor a band before and all, he sees his instruments on the side of the road, and that would give us, you know, steel band men on the whole, a very bad picture of what's been going on over the years.
But is it that steel band men perhaps are not taking enough pride in their instruments?
That's a ticklish question. Perhaps it can be for some, you know, but I wouldn't say for all, you know. Wouldn't say for all. Like, it's been much better because those pans what we got there now, we have them for since 1976 and now it's 86 and they're still going good, right? Perfect care.
Do you import your pans or are they made locally, made and tuned locally?
They are made in Antigua and they went to Trinidad for a process which is called chroming, and you know, and we make them here. There's a guy from Grace Farm by the name of Eustace, better known as Gay Tux, throughout the whole Antigua public. He's very, very good, and he would be Superstars tuner in the future, definitely, locally.
The process that is done in Trinidad, can it be done here in Antigua?
No, it cannot. We haven't got the facilities to do such a thing.
You know, Glendon, there's some people who argue that pans should be tuned here because we have persons who are skillful enough. There's some who want to import pans from Trinidad. How do you see this?
It's a funny thing. If a guy wants to import his pans from Trinidad, they can't really stop him, right? We have some greats here. Vincent, Manning, guys from Hell's Gate, the same Gate Tux. I think they're just about the only three that you can really class with out there. Those guys know what they're doing. They've been in it a long time and they really got what it takes, you know, skillful pan tuners.
Now, in years gone by, Glendon, steel band was not readily accepted in society. Today it seems to have changed. How do you see it?
That is really true. Like when I started first, it had to be, they took steel band man as a person that came from the gutter, right? But we've really fought for what we have become, and I'm proud of that. And we're going to higher heights. We're staying here forever.
How do you compare steel band in Antigua with, say, steel bands in Trinidad? What would you say?
It's close in a sense. It's very, very close. Huh? Over the years, we had guys from Trinidad who came and really brought our standard very much close to theirs. And I can say that last year Panorama was a very, very good example. It was one of the best that I have played in, you know, and it was all of a local talent. And it was real fantastic.
What are some of the instruments you have been playing in the steel band?
Well, there hasn't been any that I have not played as yet. So that ranges from rhythm right up to the high tenor.
How does the future look for Superstars?
very, very good. Very, very, very good. We are coming on strong for 1986, and as you can see, I've already got my, my rockets on, right? And I'm coming out strong and powerful, no problem about that.
As the captain of the band, how satisfied are you with the overall performances of the fellas?
It's kind of satisfactory, right? I get a lot of respect from the guys, and I respect them in return, and you cannot ask for any better thing than that.
But I suppose there's always room for improvement.
There is, and right now we're getting into a lot of different kind of music. The repertoire will be more widened. We just finished the classic there last night, Voices of Spring, and we're planning to do a couple Beethovens and Bach and them guys. So that again, superstars will be coming up again, moving on. People used to look on the other bands like Harmonize, for instance. Those guys, when it comes to classical music, they're it, right? So we are now coming. So I can say that Harmonize must be worried because we are on the move.
Financial-wise, how is it for the band?
For my band, financial-wise, well, for the past 5 or 6 years, we have not had a sponsor, and we've been moving fairly well, playing out every week and saving our money so we can get to buy pans and tune pans and make a few trips here and there, So financially, we not too strong, but fair enough.
Mr. Edwards, it has been said in some circles or at some time or another that there are some pan men who seem to cause some trouble. I don't know what it is with pan men. Do you see it that way?
No. They're going to say that we give them trouble. If you want something, you got to go for it. And if it's not what you want, you must reject it. I wouldn't say it's trouble. It's something that we need, and they know that we need it. And we just have to go out and fight for it. And I am one as a steel band man, and I'm going out to see whatsoever I can get for any band in Antigua, not just superstars, right? I am just like we had the convention there a couple of weeks ago, out of many, one body, right? So all of us are just one. And that's a force to be reckoned with. We're coming on very, very strong as one.
How do you feel now about the association of a steel band and pan players?
I love it very, very much. It's something that I have always wanted. Back in '81 we had one, but it was kind of a shaky. And a couple of bands made the others look like if, well, we're not as tops as they are. So, but now, as I say, it's out of many, one body. Things will be different. The association will be looking into the aspect of every band. And I can say thanks to Mr. Malvin Spencer. He's the greatest thing out there concerning steel band right now.
This section of the steel band, however, could not be ended without mention of some of the stalwarts of the movement. Some of these we were unable to talk to for one reason or another. Men like Clarence Shevington, Alex Roberts, Wally Howell, Walton, Art Baumjardine, Vincent Freeland, George Weeks, among others. Some, like Baumjardine, have reached to the zenith, performing in the movies Going in Style with George Burns. Steel band and pan players have come a long way, but there are other roads to travel, more mountains to climb, if they are to reap the full benefit of their struggle. To do this, pan men must unite, forming themselves into an association. Their time has come, it has seemed, for at last they have succeeded in forming this association. Focus. A public information program designed to bring you, the viewers, up to date with current events taking place here in Antigua and Barbuda. This is Focus. Hello and welcome to another of our Focus programs. On our last program, we presented the first of a two-part series, the growth and development of steel band in this country. Today, we present the final part. In December of 1949, the first steel band association to be formed anywhere was inaugurated right here. The men at the top were the late dynamic Douglas Kem Roberts as president and Percival Thibault, who still resides on Thames Street as secretary-treasurer. They had great ideas. The most prominent among them was the erection of a recreational center at what was then Macaulay Wharf. They even published a newspaper, the Steel Band Herald. Things were looking up then, but the authority would have none of it, and that newspaper lasted only one issue. Such were the pressures. Other attempts have been made at the formation of an association, but none had received very much support until recently. This time around, a government representative was there in the person of the Minister of Culture, the Honorable Reuben Harris. This is some of what he had to say in support of a Panmen and Steel Band Association.
The importance of this afternoon's event lies in its possibilities for bringing about a resurgence of interest in the steel band as a major vehicle of musical entertainment in Antigua and Barbuda, and for restoring the glory that was once ours in this field of musical endeavor. As you well know, my ministry and our government attach great value to this music form in our cultural experience. That is why in 1985, we made a considerable investment in reintroducing the steel band as one of the competitive carnival events after a lapse of 4 years. We shall continue this effort as far as is practicable and rational, but we realize that all will be of no avail without such voluntary initiative as is reflected in your present undertaking and proposed activities. At this point, Mr. Chairman, let me confess to a problem that I'm so far unable to unravel. To my complete satisfaction, and that relates to the declining impact of the steel band on the entertainment landscape. Let me explain the nature of my problem. We all remember, or at least have heard about, the early years when the steel band flourished, not merely against the apathy of certain social groups, but in the face of active opposition and even severe hostility. This was borne out by Mr. Goddard. Such hostility did not eliminate the steel band from our culture. On the contrary, steel band performers and enthusiasts became social and cultural barriers and won the hearts and acceptance of our people. Through the years, we rose to peaks of brilliance and could challenge the best in the world. Have you not heard of brute force from South Street, Hell's Gate from the Point, Rising Sun from Barnes Hill, Red Army from Grace Farm, not to mention the stars of more recent vintage, superstars, Geminites, and Harmonites? Today, however, when there is no social stigma attached to the steel band music, when it is enjoyed virtually by all, we find nevertheless that it cannot boast of generating the same level of popular excitement as it did in the years of persecution. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I wish to observe that there is a threat facing our Caribbean society, not merely of cultural enslavement or loss of cultural identity. That is often spoken against by critics. There is another insidious threat less frequently mentioned, and that is the threat of being robbed. And I mean almost literally robbed of our culture. Let us not live to see the day when we buy our steel pans from Japan, our steel band entertainment from North American performers, and books on the history of our steel band music, which trace its origins to a town in Virginia or a borough in Wales. Let us keep what belongs to us. Let us develop it, and let us be proud of it. Again, Mr. Chairman, I congratulate you all for this voluntary effort to protect and preserve an authentic aspect of our culture. I wish you well, and I promise you the full support of my ministry in all your endeavors. I thank you.
It would be remiss of us if we did not mention that the sound of the steel band was more rhythmical than musical then, as they lacked the sophistication of today. Pans were carried around the players' necks, and their existence then continued only by their enthusiasm to carry on what they had started. There was no carnival, no commercial enterprise willing to sponsor these activities, with the exception of the little done by the late Maurice Michael. Yet, pan music spread. By 1949, Red Army Steel Band was formed in Grace Farm, followed closely by the Brute Force Steel Band from South Street. Bar 20 from Kentish Village came and went quickly, but others followed, like the Rising Sun from Pigot's, Sun Valley and North Stars from Barnes Hill, Manpower from Potters, Wilberforce, Wayward Force, Nightingale, Carriedka, Duke of Iron, and Stardust from Grace Farm, Golden West from Jennings, and Blue Skies from Boland's. All these were formed before 1960. During the 60s, there would be the formation of two outstanding bands, the Texaco Astronauts and the St. Joseph's Academy Steel Band. By the 70s, there would be the rise of more steel bands such as the Buccaneer Cove Steel Orchestra, Silver Harps, Ebonites from Otters, South Stars from Bolans, and the West Side Serenaders from Grace Farm. This West Side Serenaders was the forerunner of Halcyon Steel. In less than 3 years after regrouping, they would win the Panorama Final. That was in 1975. Let's now talk with the captain, George Thomas, and listen to Halcyon Steel as they perform at the Halcyon.
How did you really get involved in steel band, George?
Well, it started when I was going to school, Princess Margaret School. And got formed by the name of Serenader. It was Serenaders at the time, and other classmates, they were actually involved in playing bands, and I decided to get involved.
And since then, you've been in steel band?
Yeah, I've been in steel band. That is from about 1977, I think.
Did you play in any other bands besides Halcyon?
Yes, I was in the Geminites, and as I told you, Serenaders, and then the name was changed to Geminites. Then after leaving school, I decided to join Halcyon.
How do you see the development of steel band in Antigua? What are your impressions?
Well, it have, come a long way. It's not really up to the highest mark, as I said. It's still going. It's not accepted fully. I feel that is one of the problems. People don't accept steel band, really. It's only a carnival thing. Some people have it as a carnival thing. But it's coming along. It's coming along pretty good.
What do you think pan men can do then to bring about this reality, this real meaning of the steel band?
Well, the pan men themselves have to act more responsible. Like, for instance, you have to show people, well, you appreciate what you're doing in order for people to appreciate you. I think, like, for instance, a band will play at a certain spot and then they will leave the pans there. This lackadaisical attitude, I think that is one of the problems why people don't accept steel band. The pan men themselves, they don't show this respect for the instrument that they play. So.
You are now the captain of Halcyon Steel. How has the going been for the band?
Well, it's been good. The going has been good. We have a good thing going down there. Sometimes it's, a little troublesome, but we all understand each other and we get over our problems very easily.
Tell me something, George. Are your pans tuned locally?
No. They're tuned by Trinidadians. We've had quite a number of tuners, as a matter of fact. Our present tuner, his name is Patrick, but a couple others have come around and help us.
Why is it that pan men are going so much for the Trinidadian tuners? What do you think is it?
Well, they're the best. There's no doubt about that. They're really the best. You can just listen to the bands that are tuned by a Trinidadian and listen to a band that is tuned by a local tuner, and you can just see the difference between the tone of the pans.
Does this mean perhaps with a little more training and exposure that Antiguan tuners will be soon as great as Trinidadians?
Yes, I feel so. We have a tuner by the name of Gatux, and he's pretty good. He's close. He's very close to the Trinidadians. I think some of our tuners will have to go down to Trinidad and learn something from them, because you have to learn from them because they're better than you. So you have to go and maybe go into the pan yards and start as an apprentice then, sinking and grooving the drums, and then you would pick up a few things.
An association has been formed for pan players and steel bands in Antigua. The president is Mr. Baldwin Spencer, whom I understand is also very closely associated with Halcyon. How do you feel about this?
Well, I'm very pleased to see that an association has been formed. And I'm also pleased to see that Mr. Spencer is at the helm, because I know that he's a good man and he would work hard to see that everything goes well.
Thank you very much.
The contribution that steel bands make to the annual carnival celebration is immense. More than that, it was the pan men who invented mass in this country. Yet, there has been very little support for them. Steel band is more alien in this country than is pop. We have failed to place the steel band music on the pinnacle it deserves, demanding national first and then international support for it. Nothing has been done to promote steel band. The time is therefore now to act before we lose it all. Which brings us to Geminites and its captain, Robin Magotson.
Robin, how did you actually get involved with steel band?
Well, I started playing steel band at the St. Joseph's Academy when I went there in about 19, well, it's a long time, in the mid-1970s. And from there, I was introduced to a small group in Gambles, and from there, I joined Harmonites. And then I moved up to where I am here now, with the Geminites.
You have been playing in steel band from school days until now. What are your impressions with how steel band has developed in Antigua?
Well, I think steel band has come a long way, especially in terms of how people have begun to accept the pan man. The steel band is now able to play in such arenas as even cathedrals. They actually come forward and ask us to play. Before time, they used to have they used to believe that all the pan men were like rebels and all vagabonds and things. I think the general trend of thought has changed somewhat. I think that's the main area. Over the years, we have accommodated here in Antigua, the use of the chrome pans, which has helped our standard considerably. And I think now that the players have been playing in nearly all the bands, maybe together for upwards, we're close to 10 years. I think now we're getting the real benefit of such a long-term relationship.
Since I have been moving around, Mr. Magotson, in this program on the development of steel band, I have heard quite a lot of arguments as to whether pans should be tuned locally, whether they should be imported. How do you feel about this?
Well, I would really like to support local, but I think we must admit that the Trinidadian quality of pans, the tone, everything is a bit superior to our local. Until we're able to attain that standard, I think you can find many of the bands still referring to Trinidadian builders.
What is it in the case of Geminites?
Well, we deal strictly with a Trinidadian. He's very strict about it. He doesn't even like anyone. He doesn't like anybody else at all to tamper with his instruments. And if we really do discover somebody locally who can come up with instruments to, as good as what we have, I don't see no reason why we wouldn't use him.
What are some of the problems pan men face, Robin?
Well, there are quite a number. I think sponsorship is one. It takes quite a lot of money to sponsor a band, and the steel bands men in itself have put a bad name on themselves. A couple of years ago, maybe about 5 years ago, bands found it easier to obtain sponsorship. But at the end of the carnival season, you'd find the bands just all over town after carnival, as if that's the end of the line. And all the sponsors' money would be going down the drain. The steel bands would only be functioning for a matter of maybe 2 months before carnival, maybe the 1 week and a half during carnival, and after that everything would come to standstill except for a few bands, and that has worried sponsors, and I think it's very hard to obtain sponsors now. And with the chrome pants, as I say, now in effect, it's very costly.
For steel band to survive, I think there must be a unified body. An association has been formed now. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think it's for the better of the steel band movement that, we have one, we all have one body to look to. As there have been in existence for, I think, the better part of a year, and I think they have done quite a lot for, the betterment of steel band.
We've been talking a lot about steel band in general, but tell us a little about Geminites. When did the band really start?
Well, I won't be able to give the exact year. It's pretty close to around 1975 or 76, I would imagine. It was originally Princess Margaret Serenaders. It used to be limited to school members only, Princess Margaret school members. And from there, I think at about 1977 or 78, the name was changed to Geminites. And I think there are quite a number of members that have managed to stick along with the band from that time. We've had quite a number come, we have quite a number go, but we still managed to have a core remain with us. We ended the Panorama, I think, 1 year as Princess Margaret Serenaders. Then we decided to take it more seriously as the Geminites. We decided we'd love to win 1 year. I think about 1978, we might have placed third, and we placed fourth in 78, I think. 79, we managed one step closer, we tied with third. And then I think there was a lapse of time before. And in 1981, we managed to win the Panorama Crown. I think that might have been a big turning point for our band.
Has this band gone on any overseas tour?
Well, yeah, so far we have been to Knoxville, Tennessee twice, including the first time representing Antigua in the 1982 World's Fair. That was real lovely.
The future for Geminites, how does it look?
Well, we still have a long way to go. We have a few problems to iron out, but I think we'll make it with hard work.
Some Antiguans, not the least among them Reginald Samuel and Eustace Manning Henry, believe that we should maintain our own originality. Since Hell's Gate and Brute Force visited Trinidad at the end of the 50s, and the late Dr. Williams pumped so much money into the steel bands there, Trinidad has once more taken the mantle of leadership in this art form. This is not to say that our bands cannot hold their own against the steel bands in Trinidad. All this says is that overall, the Trinidadian bands are better disciplined, have better availability to instruments, are better rewarded, and have better tutors. It is obvious, therefore, that we must not mimic the Trinidad sound. This idea is not only expressed by Mr. Ronald Benjamin, but is expounded by his band Metrophonics. Here, we introduce Mr. Ronald Benjamin and the band's acting captain, Mr. Neville Fenton.
Now, in my view, it was a very powerful invention. It must be noted that when it had originated in this Caribbean area down here, our people did not understand it fully. And the steel band in their development got some very hard and rough time because it was difficult for the authorities and what one would call the hierarchies to understand. I mean, a man taking an oil drum and making notes out of it, making music out of it, it's not understandable. And then again, the people who used to associate with this sort of stuff will never be the people of any great intellect, so to speak. Now, this thing started out where, I told you before, it was as a result of the abolition of slavery. This is according to the history. Now, we had our carnival here just the other day started out, and it was introduced, the steel band was introduced, and Hell's Gate, if I can remember the history well, was one of the first band in Antigua which has been created. Mind you, you had other bands in Trinidad and probably one or two other places in the Caribbean. But the actual inception and the real recognition of the steel band really was people like Hell's Gate who started to organize records, Brute Force. And as a result of this sort of progress, they were invited to Trinidad, and the people there were very mindful of this sort of invention. And that is not to say that they didn't have pan before, but as they saw Hell's Gate and Brute Force in glowing glee, they felt that it was a good thing, and they begin to, what we call, subsidize something into it, put money into it, develop the art, and now it can be seen clearly that Trinidad is way above anybody else in the world. Example, we have maybe about 8 to 9 bands here, and 7 of them have Trinidad professional tutoring, tuning, and this is also not to say that we don't have people here who tunes or arrange. But a band nowadays, maybe jumping from way up front now to our time now, but you can bear with me a minute. Band nowadays, they want the actual standard, not a semi or a low class thing. Last year you heard bands playing the Hallelujah chorus, they played something from Mozart. I mean, that takes professionalship. And even so, up today, I understand people are trying Beethoven also today, and Brahms, and all these other stuff. These things, you don't get this thing by a guest or a band come and listen to tape and thing. You have to know what you're doing musically. So this is the thing, I think, that prompted me to get involved with the pan thing. And when I was in Harmonites, I looked at the pan at a serious view. And I went around, I spoke to Manning, I got in contact with Vincent Freeland, the guy who works with the cultural department who takes care of steel band in Antigua. and I got involved with people like Noni. These were old pan builders, and Fundu used to tune pans, and you had people like Seldan and all these fellas. I went around these fellas just to find out what is this thing all about, and I looked at their techniques and I copied. I mean, it's important for development. It is important. I'm not ashamed to say, look, I got some technique from Vincent. I get some technique from Manning. For development purposes, it's important. And it cuts the cost down. For instance, look at our band Metrophonics. I mean, we don't have to send for a man in Trinidad, Grenada, or anywhere to tune our pans. We have proficient people here now. We can call on Vincent Freeland. He's building pans very good now. And if he's not around, I can do the job. And I must say, this is the sort of thing that I'm now enjoying, being able to exercise these skills that I have learned and copied and grasped from some of our prominent and proficient pan players and pan tuners around this place. And I think it was a good thing for me.
Tell me, Neville, how did you really get involved in steel band?
Well, I got in steel bands basically from school, where I was involved in the St. Joseph's Academy Steel Orchestra. When I joined the school, we had a steel band, and the art caught my eye, so I decided, well, to go into the industry. And since then, which was about 1975 or thereabouts, I got into it and I like it up to this day. And this is why I decided to continue. Metrophonics, which you've just heard this evening, is what we call a pan-yard session, regular. Right now we have been engaged in some heavy practice, basically for the upcoming steel band competition on August 1st. And we're doing a pretty difficult tune at the moment. We have been on it for some time. And I think that if the tune is perfected the way we want it to be, I think that we have a good chance of winning the competition. In terms of steel band and sponsorships and finance in Antigua, it's very difficult. As a matter of fact, for the last 2 years, we have not had a single sponsorship. We managed last year to enter the panorama due to some donations from different business personnel. This year, we haven't been that lucky to date, but we're still trying. One must try to succeed in whatever way.
Tell me, Neville, have you played in any other band besides Metrophonics?
Yes, I have played in quite a few bands. Played in Geminites, right? I did some work with Superstars once, and never been around the Hals and Panyada sorts of players, but I have been around them basically. I'm now coming down to Metrophonics. It's a fairly young band, just about 2.5 years old. And as you look around, you can see very young, upcoming members.
That certainly is good.
Well, we're doing a bit of training process at the moment, basically. And, as I say, we hope to succeed. I am basically a director of the band.
What instrument do you play in the steel band?
At the moment, I am with what we call the lead pan or the treble pan. But like during the year, when we are short of, seasonal players, when we have to play in the hotels, I just find myself in, some of the other bands, harmony, double second, the guitar, whatever needed may be, right? Just see, I've developed that art now, so I can just fit in, so to speak, in any band.
75 until now is fairly long, Neville. You have watched steel band come a long way since 75 in Antigua. What are your impressions with steel band and its progress in Antigua?
Well, today I think the steel band in Antigua, they're doing a fairly good job in terms of progress. When I remember, we only had about 4 steel bands at that time. We have developed now to some 7 or 8. And the amount of people they actually engage in the steel band playing has grown tremendous. Like I remember last year, you had 50, 60 strong, in each band playing. And when you think of members, people coming out just to play the instrument. I think one of the fascinating art that catches the eye of most people is that the type of music that can be relayed from the steel drum.
How much further do you think steel band can go and must go in Antigua?
Well, right now, I think we're the only steel band right now on the island who are looking at the pan playing in a different way. When I say this, I mean we have quite a few young players in the band. And what we're actually doing now is to actually teach them music. You see, what happened, I personally think it's a shame that we have hundreds of pan men past the bands. When they retire from steel band, whatever time, they might hear a tune on the radio. It's difficult for them to actually go and try to play that tune, because what has been happening during the years of playing is that they have been given tunes to play on the pan by arrangers, and they don't know whether they're playing the G chord, the F chord, or what. So we have the youths, and what we're doing, we're teaching them to read. And actually, we have 1 or 2 members in the band right now who you could just bring any music score, they'll take it, put it up just like a piano and play on the pan. Whereas in the bands right now, you got to practice the tune time and time again before you play it. And we personally think that that's sort of a waste of time. I think we should progress much more than that. We should be able to read from the scores just like an ordinary musician.
The growth and development of the steel band continues in this country. Steel band has been introduced into schools with the hope that it will help to stimulate more interest among the young and hasten the acceptance of the prominence of the steel band in our society. Among those making a noteworthy contribution is Mr. Fitzroy Champ Martin. Here, he tells us about his involvement in the steel band since his early youth.
I get involved when I was about 11 years old, coming up in the point area around Big Hell's Gate and Junior Hell's Gate. And I was inspired by Rupert Teal Parker, who was the former captain of Harmonized International Steel Orchestra. So I started around Point area, around Hell's Gate and Junior Hell's Gate. Matter of fact, I started in the iron band. Started playing in the iron band all around the area down Point. And then I formed a little band made out of the miniature steel pan. And we had us to run when police used to come down the road. We wasn't given the time to practice and so on in the evening. So anytime at all the police were in the area, we had us to stop practice or clear the area. And then from there, the captain of the Harmonites saw me and saw I had potential and so on, and decided he's going to take me in Junior Hell's Gate. So I started playing in Junior Hell's Gate, I think about 1962 or somewhere there.
From Hell's Gate, did you move on to play with any other bands, Champ?
Yeah, I moved on and played with Harmonites, which we changed the name from Junior Hell's Gate in 1968. We were Westside Harmonites. In 1969, we changed the name and we just called Harmonized Steel Orchestra.
Champ, I noticed you playing the drums here. Did you always play the drums in the steel band?
Well, no, I started on tenor, which is this instrument right here. And then I went and played the guitar, which is this one in the back here. And then I went and played the double second, and I went and played the bass. and now I'm playing the drums.
You are the captain of Nissan Pioneers. Do you arrange for the band as well?
Yeah, I arranged for this band. I also was the arranger of the Harmonized International Steel Orchestra.
Tell me, champ, are the pans made locally or are they imported?
No, our pans are made from Trinidad.
Why is it, champ? Some people prefer to use the local pans. You have chosen to use pans from Trinidad. Why?
Well, I believe in good things. Anything I'm doing, I believe in getting the best. And if the best is in Trinidad, I'll go for Trinidad. If the best is in Antigua, I'll take it in Antigua. For right now, the best is in Trinidad, as far as pan concerned.
Now, champ, you indicated that in years gone by, the steel band was not readily accepted in society. Policemen used to chase you. Do you see the steel band now accepted in society?
Well, yes, I think the steel band is well accepted in society because we can afford to play anywhere in the hotels, at parties, even like when these big people are having parties and so on, they hire the steel band instead of hire the jazz band. So I think we're well accepted right now by the society.
The steel band in the church, champ, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think that is good because it's done in Trinidad. I don't see why we shouldn't done it here because I could remember at the state service in 1981 when we got our independence. We played in the Anglican church and it's the first time they have a clap at a service. You know, we played a piece called Finlandia by Gene Sibelius, and at the end of the song, everybody, you have that long pause and then everybody just begin to clap. You know, it's the first time I ever saw it happen in a church service, not a church program, in a church service.
I'm interested, champ. What is it that an arranger looks for when he's arranging pans?
Well, I look for good players, good instruments. So long as I have good players and good instruments, I can do anything. That's all I would need.
Champ, steel band has moved from the West Indies and has gone to other parts of the world. Do you see this as a sort of challenge to our West Indian culture?
Well, I think it's going to be because I heard they have some steel band in England, real good, and they want to change around the instruments and all sorts of things. And if we don't try to tighten up our instruments in the Caribbean down here, I think it's going to get away from us.
The future for Nissan Pioneers and steel band in Antigua, how does it look to you?
Well, it looks good for me because we just started the 10th of November last year and we have made a very good increase. Matter of fact, we started our first performance on the 25th of December on board Royal Princess cruise ship where we had a standing ovation. And this is our first performance I'm talking about on board the ship. And then we played at the street fair in town on New Year's Day. And then we've been playing at the old Jolly Beach every Friday night. And now we have a job at the Anchorage Hotel. And as you can see, we have a lot of instruments here. Plus we have nice uniforms and so on. So on. We also have a cassette we just recorded on February 27th. And we have them available at this moment. So from since 10th of November to now, you could see how far we have reached.
Champ, you have been involved in the steel band over the years. And again, your name is a household name when it comes to steel band in Antigua. What has been some of the problems that pan men have been facing over the years?
Well, I used to face problems like men don't come practice on time. Men, when you show them a part, you know, they don't do homeworks. Like if they practice a part tonight, when they go home, they don't take the pans home. They don't practice the part, so when they come back the next night, it can be clean. Because when I started in the early days, I used to have to know my notes. Used to have to know my pan, know my chords, know my scale before I could play a song. Right now, anybody coming and playing in a steel band, you find they just start play a song. If you ask them what note that is on the pan, they don't know. Play your chord, they don't know. Play your scale, they don't know. So I came up the hard way. I don't know that's why I'm so good, but I came up the hard way. And if I'm going to teach anybody pan right now, I'm going to teach them the hard way.
Do you think pan men still have that sort of pride that existed years ago, champ?
Well, I would say yes. I would say we do have it.
the march continues. The steel bands and pan players cannot rest upon their laurels. They have been to the mountaintop before, only to see their hopes dashed. This rebirth, this kindling of the association's fire is of absolute importance if the steel band is to receive its just due. For his thought on this matter, we hear from President of the Pan Players and Steel Band Association, Mr. Baldwin Spencer.
It may be of some interest for the public to note that my involvement cannot be claimed to be one which had anything directly to do with the beating of a steel pan. However, from a very early age growing up in the area of Green Bay Grace Farm, I had always enjoyed steel band music, and I was a great admirer of both Red Army and Brute Force steel bands. I can also claim to have assisted in the establishment of what was then known as the West Side Serenaders Steel Band from Grace Farm, which is now known as the Halcyon Steel Orchestra, sometime in the 1970s. And from since that time, I have had a very, very close association with the Halcyon Steel Band, and indeed with a number of steel bands on Antigua. I operate mainly at the level of management and administration. And earlier this year, in fact, just a matter of weeks ago, the Antigua Steel Bands and Pan Players Association held its inaugural convention, at which convention it was decided that I should take on the responsibility of president of that body. It has been felt for a very long time that an association among steel bands, pan tuners, and musical arrangers was necessary in Antigua. It is not the first time, however, that an association has been formed. Several attempts were made, in fact, as far back as the 1940s, and for whatever reasons, these never lasted. We're hoping this time round, however, that the Antigua Steel Band and Pan Players Association will be a lasting institution in Antigua. Basically, the association is created to ensure that there is proper coordination among member bands of the association. It is also established to ensure that the interest of pan beaters, musical arrangers, and pan tuners are protected and promoted. It is also the interest of the association to spread steel band music all over Antigua so that people will begin to appreciate that steel band music is very much a part of our cultural heritage. We should cherish it, and that we should do everything to promote it. So with the authorities and with interested individuals and groups in the society, we're hoping that very shortly from now, there will be established some sort of national policy as regards steel bands in Antigua, because we feel that with the establishment of a national policy, this will go a long way in ensuring that the steel bands are well taken care of and that the population generally would recognize the importance of this musical art form. The steel bands have a long way to go in Antigua. There are greater heights to be reached. We're hoping in the association that we'll be able to play our part to bring that about. But we can only do so with the full cooperation of the general public. As you know, Carnival is an important part of our cultural activities. It is one of our major festivals. And as you know, steel bands play a very important part in Carnival. We're hoping that we'll be able to do the same for Carnival 1986. But we would not like the public to look at the steel bands as a sort of carnival situation alone. The public must recognize that music is music, and steel band music is a special type of music, our type of music, which should be cherished and encouraged and promoted 12 months per year, not just at carnival time. And we are hoping that with a fully fledged and functioning association, that we will get the support of the general public when we organize various functions throughout the year, where we will attempt to bring out the marvelous talents of the pan men and women as we promote and project a number of other musical activities. This would require, as I said before, full support from the general public. It would also require support from the business community. It will also require support from the steel bands, men and women themselves. We're hoping that with proper coordination, we'll be able to go places. As you know, the steel band music is catching on all over the world, and we've got to be very careful that we do not lose what is indigenously ours to people elsewhere. It is very important for us to recognize this, and we in the association will be doing everything in our power to project the importance of steel band and steel band music. I would like to take this opportunity as well to make an appeal to who I describe as the Orthodox musicians in Antigua Barbuda. I feel that they have a very important role to play in projecting and promoting the steel bands. There are a great deal of work that can be done in the musical area, and I would hope that the musicians in Antigua would spend a little more time, visit the pan yards, organize with the pan men, assist in arranging classical tunes and other tunes and so on. Get involved. Do not believe that you cannot work with the pan men and women. You can work with them. And I believe that the opportunity now exists with the formation of the association, where things can be coordinated, where programs can be organized. I see a very important and challenging role for our Orthodox musicians in assisting the pan men and women in reaching greater heights. Levels of music cannot be said to be ever attained at its ultimate. There are always areas for improvement, and we in Antigua have a great deal to achieve in this area if we can get the full cooperation of all concerned. It is hoped that the national policy on pan would assist in bridging that gap between the musicians generally in Antigua and the pan men and women. I am hoping that we will move quickly towards that objective and towards that formulation of this policy. And when that is done, I believe that we can move forward to for steel bands. Question steel band school has been addressed. The government has initiated a program in that respect. We are hoping that with the association, we will be able to work closely with the cultural department in ensuring that the benefits are maximized as far as the steel band music is concerned, that there's proper coordination in this area, and that the youths can in fact get properly involved in steel band music at the level of the schools. We have marvelous opportunities in this area. Antigua is a tourist country, and a lot of tourists who come here do enjoy steel band music. So therefore we have a market that we can develop for our products. And when we get visitors from abroad who come and enjoy, we would expect to see that in our various hotels and so on, and guest houses and restaurants, that the steel bands are being given the opportunity to entertain our visitors, because they look forward to be in part of our culture. They look forward to enjoying our type of music. They look forward to seeing and appreciating what the steel pan can put out. So here again, I feel that it is necessary for us to open up avenues so that the pan men and women can get an opportunity to display their talents all over the island and further afield. We would wish to see a situation develop where on a regular basis, steel bands in Antigua are given the opportunity to go on promotional tours to assist in promoting tourism in Antigua and to assist in promoting the culture of this country. So again, with the establishment of this national policy, all these things would be coordinated. We are hoping that these things will happen so that the steel bands can last in Antigua, so that they will not only exist around carnival time, but that they will exist in the hearts and the minds of all Antiguans and Barbadians and visitors as well.
Traditions of Antigua and Barbuda are reflected in the mass of troops and groups each year. It's the climax of the street revelry and jump-up, a portrait of the Caribbean's most colorful summer festival. Mass makers, revelers, the sounds of steel and brass all enhance the spirit and ecstasy of Antigua's carnival. Carnival Tempo introduces you to that jumping and jamming celebration, highlighting all aspects of Antigua's Carnival 1986.